Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. In India, the government is facing another protest by nurses demanding better pay scales after farmers vow to continue their sit-in against the contentious laws. Farmer leaders say they will block the border between Delhi and Noida on Wednesday to press for their demands. The strike by the paramedic staff comes amid the coronavirus pandemic, with India being the second worst hit country after the United States. Boko Haram militants have claimed responsibility for last week's kidnapping of hundreds of schoolboys in the northwestern Nigerian state of Katsina. More than 300 pupils are unaccounted for, but others managed to escape. Previously, the authorities blamed bandits for the attack. The deputy governor of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, Mahbubullah Mohibi, has been killed in a bomb attack. Security officials say the governor was traveling with his security guards when a bomb attached to his car went off. No group has claimed responsibility for the blast yet. The COVID-19 death toll in the United States has topped 300,000 with over 16.5 million infections. Pakistan has registered over 2,400 new cases and 73 fatalities overnight, pushing the death toll to over 8,900. Globally, the new coronavirus has claimed 1.6 million lives and infected over 73 million people. Pakistan's cricket team captain Babar Azam and opening batsman Shan Masood have made it to the Wisden's Test Team of the Year 2020. According to Wisden, the team comprises players with the best performance from December 2019 till now. Azam scored 600 runs while Masood made 419 in the 6 matches played during the said period. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. In India, over 5,000 nurses and paramedic staff have gone on an indefinite strike over long pending demands. The strike comes amid a surge in COVID-19 cases, with India being the second worst hit country, recording over 9.9 million infections and nearly 144,000 deaths. The protesters at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences have put forth 23 demands before the government. The demands include fixing an anomaly in their salary structure, abolishment of gender-based reservation in recruitment and contractual appointments. With a warning of action, the Health Ministry said non-compliance with the Code of Conduct will be treated as an offense. Nurses Union officials said they tried to avoid the strike during the pandemic, but the government left them with no choice. Meanwhile, Indian farmer leaders say they will completely block the border between Delhi and Noida on Wednesday to press for their demands. They have been protesting for the last 20 days against the controversial farm laws. Farmers are of the opinion that the new laws will hurt their livelihood and favor only big corporates. They have vowed to continue their protest until the government repeals these laws. But the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi insists it won't withdraw reforms. Several farmer leaders have also called upon people to pay tributes to on the 20th of December to the farmers who lost their lives during the protests. Moving on, the deputy governor of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, Mahbubullah Mohibi, has been killed in a bomb attack. Security officials say the governor was traveling with his security guards when a bomb attached to his car went off. They said 2 of his guards were also wounded in the blast. No group has claimed responsibility for the blast yet, while Pakistan has strongly condemned the attack. Now, the Boko Haram militant group has claimed responsibility for the abduction of hundreds of school students in Nigeria. More than 300 students are missing after gunmen on motorcycles stormed the government science school in northwestern Kankara town. More in the following report.
The parents of 320 students abducted from a school in Nigeria can only wait and hope for their safe return. The students were kidnapped from their school on Friday. A fierce gun battle between the militants and security forces forced hundreds of students to flee and hide in surrounding bushes and forest. Zainab Muhammad's 13-year-old son Lawal is one of those still missing.
If this government is just as they say they are, we want them to rescue our children because they have the capacity to do so. But their actions are slow because it is not their children that are involved in the incident. They put us in this situation where both we, the parents and grandparents, are in absolute confusion. They have stopped us from having peace of mind. We are totally sad.
Government says it is stepping up efforts to rescue the abducted students. A spokesman for Katsina State said 17 more students had been found, leaving about 320 students missing. In a statement, President's office said the government is in contact with the kidnappers and is negotiating students' release. Boko Haram group claimed attack which is responsible for spreading violence in the region on regular basis.
Our people are killed in the villages. Some of them are now leaving the villages and they come to the city town. But even the town is becoming like the villages. Even if you come to the city, still you are not going to be safe.
Friday's raid evoked memories of the 2014 kidnapping of 276 girls from a school in the town of Chibok by Boko Haram.
Now, the U.S. Electoral College has elected former Vice President Joe Biden to be the next president. The vote, which took place in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, formalized Biden's victory over Donald Trump. More in this report.
After over a month of brazen accusations of mass electoral fraud, litigations, recounts and re-evaluations of votes, the U.S. Electoral College finally settled the tug-of-war for the Oval Office between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Biden secured all 306 of the votes he was expected to receive, with no electors voting against their state winner. The state of California delivered its 55 electoral votes to Biden, officially putting him over the 270 votes needed to secure the White House.
I will now announce the tally of the vote for the office of President of the United States. For Joseph R. Biden of Delaware, a Democrat, ayes 55, noes 0.
Supporters of the new president-elect came out to the streets in various states to celebrate the Democrats' victory. In a speech from his hometown of Wilmington, Biden said the will of people have prevailed. Biden reiterated that he will be president for all Americans and will work to end polarization and divisions fueled by Trump.
You know, in this battle for the soul of America, democracy prevailed. We, the people, voted. Faith in our institutions held. The integrity of our elections remains intact. And now it's time to turn the page, as we've done throughout our history, to unite, to heal. As I said in this campaign, I will be president for all Americans. I'll work just as hard for those of you who didn't vote for me as I will for those who did.
Even after the Electoral College vote, Trump and his most loyal allies in Congress have refused to acknowledge Biden's win. But U.S. Attorney General William Barr has decided to step down after the Electoral College confirmed Trump's defeat. In a letter to Trump, Barr said he will be leaving the post on December 23rd, pledging the allegations will continue to be persuaded.
China says Beijing and Washington should strengthen communication and promote bilateral relations after the U.S. Electoral College confirmed Joe Biden's victory. At a briefing, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman said both countries should focus on cooperation and manage differences. Wang said the bilateral relations should be based on non-conflict, non-confrontation, and mutual respect. On Monday, the U.S. Electoral College elected former Vice President Joe Biden to be the next president. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Russia threatens the stability of the Mediterranean by spreading disinformation and undermining sovereignty. In a series of tweets, Pompeo said Russia is sowing chaos in the region. Pompeo was responding to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's comments that the U.S. is playing political games in the Mediterranean region. He said Russia undermines Mediterranean domestic politics, supports Syria's dictator, and fuels Libya's conflict with its proxies. And a technical meeting on critical reforms of the Libyan economy is being convened in Geneva. In a statement, the UN support mission in Libya says acting chief UN envoy Stephanie Williams is chairing the meeting. The meeting is being co-presided by Egypt, the United States, and the European Union. The UN says they are discussing currency reform, the banking crisis, and unification of the national budget. They are also mulling a timetable to implement these reforms. It says the meeting is taking place against the backdrop of several promising developments, including the resumption of Libyan oil production. Williams says she hopes an agreement can be reached on concrete objectives over 2 days of talks. And moving on, Turkey and Russia have condemned U.S. sanctions on Ankara over its purchase of the S-400 defense systems from Moscow. The Turkish Foreign Ministry says Ankara will take necessary steps to respond to the U.S. move.
It says United States allegations that S-400 systems will jeopardize NATO systems are devoid of any technical merit. The ministry adds Washington's decision to impose sanctions is a grave mistake and urges the United States to revise its unjust decision. It asserts that U.S. refusal to solve this matter through diplomacy, as befitting two allies, is completely senseless. Just before the announcement, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he was upset that U.S. went ahead with the sanctions. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the sanctions are illegitimate and show arrogance towards international law. The sanctions target Turkey's top defense procurement and development body, its chairman, and 3 other employees. The measures were announced under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. This is the first time the act has been used against a fellow member of the NATO alliance.
And Armenia and Azerbaijan have begun exchanging prisoners of war as part of an all-for-all swap mediated by Russia. This comes about a month after a ceasefire following deadly clashes over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Russian Defense Ministry says a plane delivered 12 people to Baku, which returned 44 prisoners. Earlier, Russian mission to NATO said its peacekeeping forces had to intervene to block a ceasefire breach in the region. It said the breach was attempted on December 11th. The mission added they are in close contact with Armenian and Azerbaijan authorities. And in Egypt, the nation's Future Party, which backs President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, has secured nearly 55% seats in the parliamentary elections. The Election Commission says the party won nearly 75% of contested seats for the newly recreated Senate. The nation's Future sharply increased its share of seats to 315 from 57 in the 596-seat parliament. Lists headed by the party won all 284 seats allocated for pre-selected lists under a winner-takes-all system. The party also won 170 of the 284 seats contested by individual candidates. Another pro-Sisi party, the Republican People's Party, won 50 seats, and non-affiliated candidates won 93 seats. Meanwhile, rival parties have filed complaints to the Election Commission alleging electoral fraud. And moving on, Somalia has cut its diplomatic relations with the neighboring Kenya. Somalia has accused Kenya of actively meddling in the electoral process in one of the country's 5 semi-autonomous states. Somalia's information minister says Mogadishu has called back its diplomatic staff from Nairobi and asked the Kenyan diplomats to leave the country within 7 days. He said cutting ties with Kenya is in response to Nairobi's open interference in Somalia's independence. Kenya has not immediately commented on the latest developments. Now, the International Criminal Court has found evidence on crimes against humanity committed during President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs campaign. In an annual report, ICC's chief prosecutor's office said there is reasonable basis to believe that Manila has employed illegal violent means in the war. It said the government was involved in the death of more than 5,300 people during the crackdown from 2016 to 2019. The report also noted thousands of more planned, directed, and coordinated killings by unidentified assailants. The World Court has been examining the case since 2018 after allegations that the government authorized unlawful killings of suspected drug users and dealers. The United Kingdom and the European Union have restarted post-Brexit trade talks in hope of securing an agreement. Both parties have confirmed that there has been enough progress for negotiations to continue. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the negotiators from both sides have not exhausted all options. Earlier, Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed the deal's main sticking points with von der Leyen. EU's chief negotiator Michel Barnier and his British counterpart Lord Frost met in Brussels. Barnier said a wider deal can fall into place if a route towards an agreement on fishing rights can be identified. The teams have not set a new deadline, but the ultimate deadline will expire on December 31st. Also, the EU has unveiled a new draft of digital legislation to tighten regulation on the operations of U.S. tech giants in Europe. The draft will give the EU users more rights to their data and give smaller tech companies more market access. It said the tech giants have been abusing their powerful platforms to corner the local market and crush competitors by unfair means. The Commission said these companies may face hefty fines of up to 10% of their annual turnover for breaching rules. And more news after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The COVID-19 death toll in the United States has topped 300,000 with over 16.5 million infections. In India, the number of deaths has surpassed 143,000, while the tally of infections has surged close to 10 million. Globally, there are more than 1.6 million deaths and over 73 million infections. More on coronavirus in the following report.
Across the world, increasing COVID-19 deaths and lockdowns overshadow optimism about the rollout of vaccinations. A fresh wave of infections is devastating Brazil, where the government says mass inoculation won't be possible before March. Elsewhere in Latin America, Argentina has become the 9th country in the world to surpass 1.5 million infections. Canada has begun its inoculation drive to become the 3rd nation to administer the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Meanwhile, the U.S. reported the highest number of deaths in a week since the pandemic began, with the virus claiming more than 17,000 lives. And Operation Warp Speed is busy trying to meet its ambition goal to produce and deliver 300 million doses of vaccine in the U.S. by January 2021.
We might be on some type of similar timeline. Our goal would be for the Moderna product to be available this time next week across the United States. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a drumbeat vaccine of the initial push being sent to all states across the country.
In Europe, in a bid to test and isolate the positive cases, French authorities have launched a mass testing campaign in Le Havre city. Italy is mulling stricter measures during the Christmas holidays after big gatherings over the weekend sparked worries of a surge. Czech restaurants, hotels and indoor sports venues, which reopened from a lockdown only 2 weeks ago, must shut again from Friday in response to a new rise in infections. Turkey has announced a 5-day full lockdown after reporting a record 229 deaths in a single day. Meanwhile, a new variant of coronavirus has been found in the UK, which is growing faster in some parts of England.
There are many variants. It just happens that this one has quite a few more mutations than some of the other variants. So that's the reason why we've taken it more, particularly seriously. But there's nothing to suggest that the symptoms are different, that the testing is different, or that the clinical outcome is different for this variant.
Singapore is the first Asian country to approve the Pfizer vaccine and says it expects to start receiving shots by the end of the year. South Korean authorities have warned of tougher restrictions if social distancing rules are ignored.
In Pakistan, 73 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 8,905. The health ministry reported 2,459 new infections overnight. It said there are more than 48,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. The ministry said out of over 443,000 countrywide cases, more than 386,000 people have recovered. The ministry said over 196,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province. Punjab has reported nearly 128,000 cases. And Pakistan's President Arif Alvi has approved the anti-rape ordinance to ensure speedy trials of rape cases. The ordinance will allow for chemical castration of those convicted of such offenses. Under the ordinance, special courts will be set up across the country to expedite trial of rape cases. Anti-rape crisis cells will also be set up to conduct medical legal examination within 6 hours of the incident. A countrywide registry of sexual offenders would also be established. As per the ordinance, disclosing identities of victims would be prohibited. And a batch of Chinese Air Force troops is in Pakistan to participate in a joint Air Force exercise, Shaheen 11. The exercise aims at strengthening bilateral defense ties between the two countries. More in this report by our correspondent, Sumaira Khan.
Shaheen is the 9th in the series of joint air exercises which is conducted each year in both countries on alternate basis. Director, Center for Aerospace and Security Studies Air Marshal Wasimuddin said the training will improve the comprehensive air combat capability of both forces.
This exercise basically is aimed to increase the interoperability between the two air forces, learn from each other's experiences, polish our aerial tactics, and also improve the bilateral relations between the two countries.
He also warned that India may launch propaganda against the joint exercise.
These exercises are not aimed against any other country. As far as the Indian Air Force is concerned, they are actually transforming their Air Force to fight on two fronts.
Air Vice Marshal Fahimullah Malik says the exercise is being conducted to strengthen the Pakistan Air Force's intraoperability.
We would like to find out that what are the impediments in the interoperability. That is, in case of two allied forces have to work together in adverse environments. Number one, it is a good opportunity for us to learn that how do we carry out the interoperability.
The drills would last until the end of December. More than 50 aircrafts and 170 personnel from both sides will participate with real-time air and ground hardware to prepare for contingency scenarios. Sumaira Khan, Indus News, Islamabad.
Moving on, New Zealand's Foreign Minister Nanaia Mahuta has offered to help negotiate a truce between Australia and China. The two countries are caught in an escalating trade and diplomatic spat. In an interview, she said next year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit is an opportunity to bring both parties to the table. New Zealand is hosting the high-profile summit. Mahuta called for a return to the tried and tested way of diplomacy to work through challenging issues. She said banking on Twitter and social media promotes disinformation. And 11 elderly people have died in a fire at a retirement home in the Russian region of Bashkortostan. The Emergencies Ministry said 4 people evacuated on their own before the arrival of firefighters. It said one of the survivors was a staff member who managed to lead other residents out of the wooden building. The ministry said the blaze was put out 3 hours later. The 11 victims were also elderly residents who had mobility issues and could not be quickly evacuated. Russia's investigative committee said it has launched a probe into the incident. Thousands of residents in Australia's New South Wales and Queensland states are on alert due to flash floods. Heavy rains, wild winds and huge seas have smashed the northeast coast for the 5th straight day. Officials in New South Wales have issued evacuation orders for Condong to Tumbulgum and the surrounding low-lying areas. They said about 1,000 properties were affected, coupled with electricity and internet outages. Meanwhile, authorities in Queensland have closed all beaches amid abnormally high tides of up to 30 centimeters. The storm also whipped up thick sea foams, a rare event along the beaches in the Gold Coast. It lured families and children to play in the bubbles. And President Emmanuel Macron has vowed to hold a referendum to add France's commitment to fighting climate change to the country's constitution. Speaking to the Citizens Climate Council, he acknowledged that Paris has not done enough to fulfill its commitments to fight global warming. Macron said he has been in favor of adding biodiversity, the environment, and addressing climate change to the Constitution. He said the amendments will require a parliamentary vote as well as a referendum. Macron added France needs to keep moving forward and that work is even more urgent. Earlier, the European Union also agreed to achieve the bloc's 2030 targets to reduce greenhouse gases to 55%. And in Brazil, over 92,000 turtle hatchlings have been born on a sandy beach along the Purus River, which is the tributary of the Amazon River. More in this report.
Tens of thousands of giant South American river turtle hatchlings have emerged on a beach in Brazil. According to Wildlife Conservation Society, the births have occurred over several days. Approximately 71,000 hatchlings emerged on one day alone, followed by another 21,000 a day after.
Mass births occur when the hatchlings are born in sync and can reach the river together. In this walk, the greater the number of hatchlings that take place together, then the greater the chance of survival, and the possibility of being eaten by predators is diluted. Hatchlings and predators in the river are not lacking.
The mass births took place in the Abufari Biological Reserve, where Wildlife Conservation Society has been monitoring females and their nest before, during and after the birth of the hatchlings. The Wildlife Conservation Society is also studying the conditions for mass hatchlings to help improve the management and protection of turtles.
The Wildlife Conservation Society Brazil team has been monitoring these species during spawning and mass birth to understand under what circumstances these events take place and how can we better manage, protect and conserve these species.
The giant South American river turtle is the largest freshwater turtle in Latin America, weighing 200 pounds and reaching lengths of 3.5 feet. The species of the giant South American turtle is becoming endangered after an increase in trafficking of their meat and eggs.
7 million Christmas trees enter the landfill every year. As a fix, sustainable Christmas trees that can be returned later are up for rent in the United Kingdom. More in this report.
Instead of buying a Christmas tree and then throwing it away come January, some shoppers are choosing to rent a tree that they can give back and can be used again. Online store Christmas on the Hill, who specialize in sustainable trees and wreaths, are not just offering cut trees this year. They have branched out into reusable rental ones that live and grow in pots. They source their trees from a farm in Gloucestershire, one of only a few who specialize in pot-grown Norway spruce trees.
Good. Excellent. They're never dug out, so there's no trauma to them. So we get the trees from the farm, they come in this pot, and you take it into your home and you look after it for 3.5 weeks. That's basically the limit on how long they can be inside. And then we take it back to the farm and they stay in the pots the whole time and the farm look after them.
All their rental trees are already sold out.
We called him Jeffrey because he's alive.
Not that Jeffrey has anything to do with aliveness.
No, but he is alive and we're very pleased with him. We're going to water him every day, aren't we?
Yeah.
He's here. We love him, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's a lot better than having a dead Christmas tree or a plastic one.
I agree with her.
Norway spruce trees grow about a foot each year and they can happily live in a pot for about 7 years before their roots are too big and they have to be retired from the rental game and planted in the ground.
In China, the ground teams are ready for the landing of Chang'e 5's probes returner at the Siziwang banner. They have completed a comprehensive training simulating various conditions. The probe's returner is expected to land at the Siziwang banner in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. According to the China National Space Administration, Chang'e 5 probe has completed its first orbital correction en route to Earth. Chang'e 5 is one of the most complicated and challenging missions in China's aerospace history. It is also the world's first moon sample mission in more than 40 years. And now moving on to business, China has become the only G20 member to see GDP growth in the second and third quarter of the year. And it was acknowledged by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says Beijing has recorded positive growth of 4.9% year-on-year in 2020's third quarter. In a press release, the OECD said GDP in G20 area rebounded by 8.1% in the third quarter, with major economies seeing double-digit growth. But as a whole, it remained significantly below the pre-pandemic levels of the same period last year. OECD said GDPs of France, Italy, Turkey, UK, South Africa, and Mexico rebounded in double digits following contractions in the second quarter. It added Canada, Germany, Brazil, US, Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia also saw their economies grow in the third quarter.
We'll return with more on business after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for more on business. In Britain, unemployment rates have once again risen to a record high in the 3 months to October as the government coronavirus package is ending. Government data shows the unemployment rate has reached 4.9%, up from 4.8% in the past 3 months. It said the number of redundancies has reached a record high of 370,000 in the August to October period. Economic Statistics Director Darren Morgan says the weakened labor market is now a continued trend. Tax office data shows the total number of job losses since March are 819,000. Earlier, Finance Minister Rishi Sunak extended a broad job scheme to March 2021 in the light of a second wave of coronavirus. And U.S. stocks opened higher as the Congress continued negotiations on another economic relief package. Distribution of COVID-19 vaccines across the country also lifted Wall Street's main indices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading higher by about 0.5%. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite are also trading higher by about 0.2%. Meanwhile, oil prices fell as tighter lockdowns in Europe and a forecast for a slower recovery in demand next year outweighed relief from vaccination rollouts. And now moving on to sports, Pakistan's captain Babar Azam and opening batsman Shan Masood have made it to the Wisden's Test Team of the Year 2020. According to Wisden, the team comprises players with the best performance from December 2019 till now. Shan scored 419 while Azam made 600 runs in the 6 matches played during the period. Babar made 3 centuries and his highest score was 143. New Zealand's Kane Williamson has been named captain of the team, with South Africa's Quinton de Kock selected as wicketkeeper. No Indian cricketer made it to the Wisden's Test Team of the Year. And in cricket, New Zealand all-rounder Colin de Grandhomme will miss 2 matches of Test series against Pakistan due to foot injury. Talking to reporters, coach Gary Stead said Grandhomme has a stress reaction in his right foot, which affects his bowling. Stead said New Zealand is hopeful that spinner Azaj Patel will be available against Pakistan. He added Captain Kane Williamson is also expected to join the team for the 2nd and 3rd T20 matches. New Zealand will play their 2nd T20 match against Pakistan on the 20th of December in Hamilton. And in golf, South Korean A-Lim Kim has won the U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship in Houston. In a stunning finish, Kim rallied from 5 down and notched birdies on the final 3 holes to surge to take an unassailable lead. Kim birdied the 70th, 71st, and 72nd holes to take a 1-shot lead. American player Amy Olsen tied for 2nd position, while Ko Jin Young from South Korea stayed on 3rd position with total -2 points. It was Kim's first ever appearance in the Women's Open and made first victory on the LPGA Tour for the 94th ranked player in the world. Kim is now the 9th Korean winner of the U.S. Women's Open in the last 13 years. And now it's time to take a look at the latest weather updates from around the world. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.